Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. I'm your host, Charles. Along with me, as always, my co-host, editor, producer, co-pilot, gunner, navigator, orator, and podcasting associate, Jacob Gloth. How are you doing today, Jacob?
I am swell, Charles.
Are you ready for a television series?
I am. I'm very excited for whatever you've got going here. You said last time it was going to be depressing, I think?
It's not a happy show. It's very much in direct antithesis to the show last week that we did, which was like a fun, lighthearted show about friends who all live together and they solve problems by coming together, and it's more of a serialized sitcom. This show is very much it's a story, it has beginning, middle, and end, and nobody really has a happy ending in this show.
That's exciting. Not really.
It's
sad, exciting in a sad way, I guess.
No, it's great. It's called Good Luck and Get Fucked. That's the...
I can't wait to not write that on the thumbnail.
And just put the little, put an asterisk on the U. That's fine. And it is about a cyberpunk lawyer who represents a grown child. That is to say, a child who was grown in a vat. It's a human rights case, and he is defending her against her creators, Ovoxum Incorporated. Right? So that's the basic setup of the show. Is that this guy, Enrico Rendier, is a down-on-his-luck defense attorney who's been blackballed by every criminal union of Harbor Bay because he was willing to speak to the feds about one of his clients, a child predator.
The present or future?
This is future. This is a cyberpunk universe, so we're not really going to get into specific years, but it's just kind of an extension of our modern times, right? So he was able to break attorney-client privilege after the feds paid his confidentiality tariff, which is basically a fee that lawyers have written into their contracts now, in which they are able to break that privilege for money. And most lawyers don't do it, but Enrico Rendier decided that he should because his client was such a heinous man that he's like, yeah, sure, I'll rat on him. Oh. And so basically this universe, everyone and everything can be bought for. It can be bought, paid for, it doesn't matter. And nothing is sacred. Is that
so just like ours, or?
Yeah, kinda, yeah, basically. It's just ours, but more extreme.
Okay.
And so he was this high-paid, very influential criminal defense attorney years ago, but now he's found himself just working in traffic and family court. And he's this sleazy, conniving, frugal, drunk scumbag.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is he like a Better Call Saul type of guy? Is he breaking the rules, or is he sticking to them?
He's breaking the rules, but, he doesn't really have an opportunity to break the rules now because all he does is represent people who've, have speeding tickets or people who are, getting divorced or whatever. He doesn't have the opportunity to break the rules. But, yes, he's like a Better Call Saul style of attorney, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he fights for what's right. That's his thing. Even though he's a scumbag, he does fight for what's right, even when it's against his own self-interests, And maybe wasn't always the case with him. Maybe that's how he got so, successful as a defense attorney. But now he's got this code that even his best friend, Lewis Hopsfield, doesn't understand. But it is definitely a code. Lewis Hopsfield is Red's part-time investigator and full-time friend, who is most often found pulling him out of a puddle of his own vomit, sin, and self-loathing pity. A better friend than Red deserves, but one who often makes money off of his misfortune, Hops is a kind, experienced, stoic, and thoughtful man. So Hops is kind of...
The alcoholic's best friend is named Hops.
Yeah.
Very nice.
I like that. It's fun. Hops he's like a... Think of Mike in Breaking Bad, right? He's not a bad man. He's not a bad person. He's definitely, got loyalty and he's got principles, but he is very happy sitting in the kind of shitty situation that he's in, right? He's making enough money off of Enrico. He's, doing investigation for him, right? Like, when he's got a client who's getting divorced, like, Hops will be the one who goes and follows the divorcee and sees what illicit actions he's getting up to, that sort of thing. So
maybe even encourages a little bit, or is that too far?
No, I think that's far enough. Maybe
gets
he'll
the prostitute to stand on a certain corner at a certain time of day.
Exactly.
Go after a certain guy.
So that's kind of the main thrust of their relationship is Red is trying to get his way back into the limelight of like attorneys, whereas Hops is happy where they are, and he thinks that pushing the envelope, making too much noise is just a bad idea, and that he should, just be happy with the amount of money they're making and the, little recognition that they get, right?
Yeah.
And so those are two main, guys. And then we have 3LI562, or otherwise known as Liza, the first vat-grown, mentally proficient human being. Now, in my headcanon, this universe is similar, if not the same universe as Fear and Loathing in 2084.
Okay.
So there are vat-grown beings. There are people who are vat-grown, but they have their brains altered in the vats so that they don't come out sentient. They come out as these kind of like meat automatons who just do what they're told, right? Much like H&M. And this girl, Liza, was the first person who was grown and her brain was not altered in any way. And so she is, just as intelligent as any other person. And she is a little girl, and she was smuggled out of the orbital Ovoxum lab and hid on Earth in a sewer safe house under Laxum, Virginia, the biggest city in America.
Laxum, Virginia?
Laxum.
Real place?
No. I made it up. But in this universe, the coasts are underwater because of climate change, and so New York and Boston and cities like that have been destroyed, and Laxum, Virginia has become like the biggest coastal city in the country.
Damn.
And so she was basically stolen away off of this orbital station and hid on Earth and she was hid in the sewer system of the biggest city on the planet, or in the country, because that'll like block out, various attempts to find her, right? The company has, plenty of chips and various, means that they have that they're looking for Liza, but because they're, surrounded by all this noise, all this static, information and noise, that it's easier to find them, right? And she was stolen away by Amelia Hart. And this is
Amelia
woman who...
Earhart? That's crazy.
Yeah, Amelia Earhart. She was not eaten by the coconut crabs. In fact, she lived to like the 31st century or whenever this takes place. And she is currently living in
youth.
Exactly. And she's currently living in a sewer system with this little girl that she rescued. And Amelia is Liza's caretaker, a woman who puts others above herself to a suicidal degree. Like she's a good person, but she is so intent on helping others that it seems more self-destructive than anything else. And, we'll find out later that she has a dead family, and that's why she's, like, adopted Liza, and she's keeping her safe because she, sees her as her, like, second chance. And she spent years living in the sewers with Liza because Liza was taken from the orbital station when she was, like, an infant, and now she's, like, 9 years old. So they've been living underground for 9 years-ish. And Amelia Hart, in that time, decided that she would improve herself. So she's a skilled martial artist, and she's an educator, and she's, like, determined to do whatever she can to make Liza's life happy and safe, So she's taught herself kung fu in the sewers in order to protect her, right? And those are our four main characters: Liza, Amelia Hart, Red, and Hops. And their, various adventures throughout the city will make up the first half of the series. And the second half of the series will obviously be the, the trial, the court case in which Rendier is arguing that Liza is worthy of all human rights. You know, she is a human being. She is not property of the company. She is a person, and so she is, you know, should not be treated as property. She should be, you know, treated with all the same respect that a human being is treated with, right?
Yeah.
And so I've got some other characters in this show, but we'll get to them as we go along. So, I'm gonna tell you the first episode, right? I've got most of the episodes plotted out, like, beat for beat, but some, you know, the ending is a little bit more fluid. I do know what happens, it's just not specific. So, as many of my shows often do, it starts with Red. He's in a puddle of mud on the ground, drunk off his ass, you know? Just feeling sorry for himself, right? And he's picked up by Hops and brought into the office where he's, like, washed up, and he gets some coffee in him, and he tries to sober him up, right? Because there's a case, you know, Red is arguing a case in 30 minutes, right? For a husband in divorce court. And he got money, you know, before the case started, and he blew all that cash on booze. And so, you know, he sobers him up, and Hops gets him into the court, you know, as soon as, like, just in time, and Red is able to make a case and argue, and, you know, eventually he gets the husband you know, a majority of the settlement for the divorce, and it's blah blah blah, right? And we see a montage of this stuff happening as Red, you know, he takes a job doing, like, some small town stuff. Hops goes and investigates while Red gets drunk, and he blows all the money he earned from that job. Then Hops finds him, sobers him up, and puts him in the court, right? And that's just their thing. We get a montage of that, right? Cut to Amelia and Liza. They're, like, coming out of the sewers for the first time in 9 years, right? Liza's seeing the sun for the first time, right? They're, you know, in, like, a big heavy poncho, like, think Kenobi and Leia in the show, in Kenobi the show, when they're trying to hide.
Did you watch that show?
Yeah, I did. I watched that show.
Oh, I'm surprised.
Yeah,
I've
seen
it. Surprised you seen
obviously. I've seen things. I watched that show. I thought it was fine.
It was terrible.
It wasn't terrible. It was fine. You know, some of it was good. Some of it wasn't as good. I like that the ending battle when he throws all those rocks at him. But back to this show. Liza and Amelia are, like, going through the city, and they're like, they see all their faces. They see their faces, or Amelia's face, on, you know, a billboard, like, wanted. You know, we want her. She stole property from Ovoxum Incorporated. You know, that sort of thing. So they go to a seedy motel, and Amelia gives the motel owner, let's say, like, $700, and it's like, here's for a room and your silence. And the motel owner's like, fine. She puts Liza up in the motel, and then goes out on the town. And this is kind of an introduction to the universe. Like, Amelia will be walking around town. Maybe she'll go up to a stall in the underground market, and she buys some sort of face cloaking equipment, right? So people don't recognize her. And she's, you know, going around, she's investigating, she's seeing what's up. She's, like, doesn't know what to do because her underground sewer lair has been raided by Ovoxum Incorporated, right? The agents have found her at last, you know? After nearly a decade of hiding, they finally found her, and she knows she needs to do something before it's too late. And she sees the cards for Red's law firm. Right? And this is very much a Better Call Saul style situation, in which it's gonna be, like, Red in a big goofy suit doing, like, a thumbs up, big smile, you know, that sort of thing. And I was thinking maybe we could get Bob Odenkirk to play this lawyer, but that might be that's too on the nose, you know. We'd probably have to hire somebody else. Let's hire Matthew McConaughey. Matthew McConaughey plays this lawyer.
I like that.
And Woody Harrelson plays Hops, because they're best friends in real life or whatever.
Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah. And so they're whatever. She sees them, and she picks up the card, and she looks at it, and she, like, maybe the tagline is something like, "We'll take any case," or something like that. And she like gives a look. Cut to Red and Hops. They're sitting in a bar after a successful case, like a win. They're having a few drinks, whatever. And they're just talking about like, oh, do you remember the good old days back when we had money and power and influence? People knew my name, people recognized me. And this is mostly Red talking. Hops isn't really all that interested in reminiscing about the past. He's happy with what he's got. He makes a fair bit of money. He gets to hang out with his best friend, and that's it. And so they're just talking until one, some guys at a table next door to them, like, recognize them, and they start coming up and they start picking on him, and they, like, shove Red, and Red's like, oh, I'm sorry, pal. And it's revealed that these gentlemen are part of the Russian mafia, And they are not very happy to see Red. They're like, we don't want anyone. You get out of our bar, all right? You stay away. That's not really Russian, but, I kid.
Russian accent.
That's my Russian accent. I sound very Russian, right? Hey, yes, very nice.
Like
and Hops, yeah, a little bit. I don't know any Russians. And Hops is like, he wants to like step up. He's like, hey man, step away unless you want to see something happen. And he cracks his knuckles, and it's like about to be some sort of fight. And then 6 other Russian mob guys stand up, and Hops is like, okay, I don't want to die today. So he like helps Red out, and they stumble away, and they get into a taxi maybe, and they're taking it to Red's law firm, right? And they sit down, and Red pulls a bottle of whiskey out of his desk, and we get the impression that he's just drinking himself to death. And I think Red's law firm should be a bit like Jessica Jones's detective agency in the Netflix show, where it's like, it's her house, this is her apartment, and she just has an office,
Yeah.
And she just like has her bed in like he has his bed in just like a small side room, whatever. And Red and Hops are just sitting there, and they're drinking, they're just talking about stuff, and they hear a knock on the door, and Hops is like, we're closed. Whatever, not now, whatever. They're closed, and then the knocking gets more and more insistent until Red's like, fine, whatever, and he gets up and he, stumbles over to the door, and Hops is kind of like, hey, buddy, slow down. Red just slams the door open, and it's like, what do you want? And this woman, maybe in the background of the same shot, we can show a TV that's like, America's Most Wanted, or whatever, and it's her face. And she steps in and is like, I need legal representation. And she has like a huge wad of money in one hand, and a little girl's, she's holding Liza's hand with her other. And she's like, I need representation now. And that's the end of the episode.
Ooh,
Period. Yeah, exactly.
Does he accept? Does he not?
Who knows?
Gotta watch episode 2.
Watch episode 2. And so they, sit down and they're talking, and Red's just like pouring himself, like, he was drinking doubles before, now he's drinking fucking quadruples. He's just like drowning himself in liquor, and he's just like, wait, explain this to me again. Like, you stole proprietary technology from Ovoxum Incorporated. No, I stole her. Amelia is explaining that the proprietary technology that she stole is this little girl. And it's like, you telling me that little girl's vat-grown? Vat-grown people don't have brains. Everybody knows that. And they
don't grow little girls either.
Yeah, exactly. They only grow fully grown men. They come out 35. They live 5 years, then they fall over dead or whatever. And then Liza, or Amelia, like, pulls Liza over, and then he shows her stomach, and she has no belly button, right? It's and that's like, what? She didn't have a belly button, because she was vat-grown, and she didn't have an umbilical cord, so she didn't have a belly button. And Hops is like, kind of like, what? Oh my god, this kind of like changes everything. Red is like, immediately he just like sees fame in this future. He's like, this is my step back into the major leagues.
This is my ticket.
This is my ticket back into the high and mighty life of a defense attorney.
Defense attorney, yeah.
So Red is like immediately like, yes, we'll take your case. Hops is like, no, we're turning her in. This is not this. We are not getting involved in this. You know, he's not a bad guy, but he's like, this is above our pay grade. We are not involved in this at all. And Hops is, you know, he's really insistent that they don't want any part of this. This is just going to put a target on their back. Every mobster, gangster, and corporate, you know, spy is going to be gunning for them. They got to stay out of the way of this. And Red looks over at Amelia, and then he looks over at Liza, and she's not paying attention. She's 9. She's like kind of like just fascinated with the world. And she's never seen anything like this because she's lived in a sewer her whole life. So she's just looking at stuff and she's playing with things. And we see, you know, for the first time in the show so far, we see Red kind of overcome with a little bit of humanity. And he's like, no, we've got to help these people. You know, like we're criminals where sex is shit, Hops, and this is our last chance to do something worthwhile before we both end up in the ground. You know, and Hops is like, fine, whatever. And so he decides that we'll help them out, but we've got to find them somewhere safe to stay. And so Hops and Amelia decide to go out, and they go looking for a safe house, while Liza and Red stay inside the law firm. And Red just like kind of has a conversation with her, and that's kind of the episode, is Red having conversation with Liza and just kind of getting her life story and what she knows and what she remembers, and talking about Amelia, and it's like, oh, she raised me, you know, she's my mom, or she's my auntie, I don't know, she's the one who takes care of me, she's always taking care of me, I don't know anything else, we lived somewhere damp and now we live somewhere dry, and we hear lots of things go bang, bang, bang at night, and we used to not hear anything go bang, bang, bang at night, but now we hear lots of things go bang, bang, bang. And it's very childish. And then, you know, maybe Red asks her a question, and, you know, I don't know what it would be, like, okay, can you tell me, you know, how many years you've been alive? And, or something like that. And Liza looks up at him and is like, I'm not stupid, man. I'm 9 years old, okay? Like, it's so we want to kind of establish this rapport between Red and Liza, in which, you know, he knows more than her about the world, obviously, but she's not an idiot. She's still like able to use her brain and figure out what's going on. And at the same time, we've got Hops and Amelia searching throughout the city, right? And Hops has a lot of criminal, let's say, contacts. He knows a lot of people, and that's where we're gonna meet one of our favorite characters, one of our favorite side characters, and that would be Francesca Parazzi, a psychic con woman and Hops' connection to the underworld. And she is this, like, we go into, you know, like a 31st century gypsy camp, basically, right? And there's this fortune teller at the back, and she'll spin its tail, and we see some, like, you know, country bumpkins, and they're just like walking out of the thing, and they're talking about like, oh my god, could you believe that she was talking, you know, and she knew exactly what your name was and where you were from and all this stuff. And then, you know, it's kind of a build up, and then they walk in, and Hops is like, hey Francesca, hey Franny, how you doing? And she's like, you know, could be better, could be worse, that's life. You still conning, you know, yokels? And she's like, yeah, look at this setup. And we see that she's got like a facial recognition database that tells them exactly like age, like home address, where they were born, you know, all their stuff. So it's like, obviously, that's how she knew all the stuff. And so they're able to find, you know, through her, they're able to figure out a safe house. And so that's how the episode ends, is with Amelia and Liza being dropped off at a safe house by Hops. And then Hops goes back to Red, and Red's like, this is gonna make us famous. End of episode. You know, we kind of get like that humanity that you saw in his eyes when Liza was like, he just saw this little girl. It's kind of turned back, and he's kind of got like the black eyes, you know, a shark's eyes. And he's like, we're gonna make so much money off of this. End of the episode. So you kind of don't know where Red's allegiances lie. Does it lie with him being, you know, a real human being who has empathy for other human beings, or does it lie with him being power hungry and money grubbing, right? That's end of the episode. Yeah, alright. Episode 3 is kind of a reconnaissance episode. It's not a whole lot's going to be happening actively. There's going to be a lot of slow build sort of stuff. This is kind of, they've decided to take the case, so they've got to start building the case. And so Hops decides to go interview some people. You know, he's going to have conversations with scientists, physicians, doctors, historians, and maybe a philosopher or two, you know, just to kind of like establish what a baseline of humanity looks like, you know? And all these things, and maybe we get like what's the test in Blade Runner that they give to replicants to make sure that they're people?
Something Voight text.
Yeah, the Voight-Kampff test.
Voight-Kampff, that's what it is.
Yeah, he and, you know, maybe Hops is able to build this Voight-Kampff test from his conversations with doctors and scientists. And so he's establishing that. Meanwhile, Red is setting up a meeting. He sets up a meeting with one of his personal contacts, which is, I gotta turn back a page 1 sec, which is Marianne Dixon, a United Army's human rights lawyer who's been banned from helping Red with the case, right? So that's basically what we've figured out. Instead of the United Nations, we have the United Armies, because nations no longer run the world, armies do. And she's she's one of the human rights lawyers who works with these people, and she's trying to, you know, she's working on, like, helping immigrants and helping refugees and all this stuff, and Red, like, decides to meet up with her, and it's very Deep Throat-esque, sort of, like, they meet up in a parking garage, right? Or no, that's later. They meet up in her office. Red meets with Dixon in her office, and she's like, hey, I know that I said you could call me anytime, or that you owe me or I owe you a favor, but this is a little ridiculous. I got a lot on my plate right now. And Red's like, hey, I got something you might be interested in. And he closes the doors, you know, anyone listening? No. He throws down a pamphlet, like an envelope, and it's a bunch of pictures of Amelia and Liza that were taken in his office without their knowledge. He's like, these two came to see me today. That's Amelia Hart. She's like the most wanted person, like, in the country. Why'd she come to see you? Because that little girl is the stolen technology. That's what she took from Ovoxum. And Dixon is like, shit. You know, she, you know, whispers it because she's, you know, very curious. She's not really happy about, you're not happy. She's not really, she knows that people are going to be interested in this. And she's like, get out. You can't get out right now. I'm not going to tell anyone, but you need to leave right now. Because this is going to put a target on my back. It's going to put a target on your back. And it's going to get that little girl killed. And Red's like, that's why I'm doing this. We need to help her. If I don't fight for her, nobody will. And then she just belongs to Ovoxum. She's just another one of their assets. She's just another proprietary technology that we'll never see again. And Dixon's just like, get out right now. You need to leave. And so Red, like, he's angry, and he leaves, and he goes and he gets drunk. Because that's what Red does when he's angry. That's what he does when he's sad. That's what he does when he's bored. You know, he's just an alcoholic. And so Hops meets up with him, and he, you know, it tells him basically what he heard. Like, he's talked to these scientists and these philosophers, and he's kind of established a baseline of what humanity, you know, means and what it means to be a person. Like, there's this test. You know, I've put together this test. I've gotten a lot of people to talk to me about it, and I think we've got it figured out plainly. And Red's like, Dixon's off. She's not gonna help. This is too hot for her. She's not willing to give us any sort of help whatsoever. And then, just as he's saying that, an agent, like just some random courier, walks into the bar and puts an envelope on the bar, slides it over to Red, and leaves silently. And it's an address. And like I said earlier, it's the parking garage. It's a parking garage. Dixon's in like a heavy trench coat, a hat, sunglasses, the whole deep throat situation. And she's like, this is the only place we can meet. There are people who are interested in this, people in my own department, in my office, who I have, ties to Voxum, and they'll be keeping an eye out for this. Has been the like top priority thing on the, on the docket for the past 3 weeks. Whatever. Sorry. Excuse me. And so she, slides them like an envelope full of information. It's like a thick, think later Harry Potter book. It's a thick envelope full of information all about Voxum experiments and stuff. And it's like, this is stuff that they paid the United Armies to hide. It's not meant to find the light of day. It was meant to be destroyed. I kept it just in case something like this might happen. I'll keep in touch, but don't find me. I'll find you. And Dixon leaves. Red and Hops are just kind of like a little shocked. They didn't realize just how important this case was, but they're happy and, happy with the information that they have, and they're, reading through, and we're just like, it's stuff that I've told you already, but, they don't know. Like stuff like she was vat-grown, she's the first person after like dozens of experiments to try and vat-grow somebody with a working human brain. She was the first to survive, past the, initial stages of development, and like she was quote unquote born, made, evacuated on this day. Amelia Hart was one of the caregivers that was assigned to her, all this stuff. And that's how the episode ends, with them just getting this like boatload of information. So yeah, that's episode 4. I'm sorry. I'm just finding my notes. Give me a second. All right.
I'm not pressuring you.
No, you're pressuring me. Gosh.
Where is it, Charlie? Come on.
It's right here. I've just sometimes I mix up the episodes, right? Like in my notes, I have Red talking to the philosophers.
Oh, there we go.
All right. And so in this episode, we kind of get this is the first time we're seeing Liza and Amelia in the safe house, and they've kind of it's been set up. Francesca has talked, has convinced her criminal organization to help her out, so they've given her books, and they've given her toys, and all this stuff that she's never had before. And so Liza's happy as a clam, and Red and Hops they show up at the safe house, and they're talking to her, and they've, got all of this information, and it's a lot of information. It's a lot of dirt, legions of human rights violations that have been happening on this orbital station against vat-grown and born persons, as well as evidence that worker food is being supplemented with human meat of the failed grown subjects, right? So they've been, all the failed subjects have been ground up and fed to the workers that they have to keep them moving. It's all that stuff. And this is very much a talky episode in which they're just having conversations, and Amelia and Red and Hops leave while Liza stays at home, and she's watching movies. And I think it's good. The movies that she watches, I've got 2 down. Let me know if you think of any more. But the movies she watches are going to be very much like Shane in Logan, right? Where they're talking about what's going to they're prophetic. They're talking about what's going to happen in the story and the kind of themes that we're playing with. And so she's watching Casablanca, right? That's the that's what she watches, and she's loving it, and she learns about people through this. And so that's basically it. And then the episode ends with Hops administering the test that he's put together to establish someone's humanity, and Liza passing it with flying colors, and even getting a higher score than Hops got himself. Hops is because he's, you know, a little bit of a loner and a little bit of a goon, I'll say. You know, he's not the most morally upstanding person, and so he, like, doesn't really do well on the empathy, you know, sections of the test. But Liza's, like, got, let's say, 150 is the score that you need to be considered, like, a regular person. Hops got 152, and Liza got 200, or something. Like that, we'll say. And so this episode ends with Red and Amelia, like, finally convincing Hops that this case is worth taking. And that it's great, and this is going to be fun. It's not going to be fun, it's going to be bad, but it's going to be important. And so that's the end of episode 4. Episode 5 begins with Red meeting Dixon in the parking garage again to discuss his findings. And, you know, he's put together this whole case, you know. He's got the interviews from the scientists and the philosophers and doctors and historians, and he's kind of put together this very persuasive argument that Liza is fully deserving of all the human rights that a regular born person is, because that's going to be kind of the difference is going to be grown versus born. And that's, you know, grown v born. There you go. That's gonna be the name of the title. That's gonna be the title of the episode that the actual case is happening in, let's say. Okay. And Dixon is talking with him, and she's like, I believe you 100%. This is all very persuasive and true. She is a person. You're still going to lose. Doesn't matter. Ovoxum has more money, has more time, has better lawyers than you. They are going to destroy you and destroy everyone you love. Like, this isn't just going to affect you. This is going to destroy Hops's life. It's going to destroy Amelia's life. It's going to destroy Liza's life, your family, your friends, everyone. And, it's kind of very dour, you know, like, Red is kind of just like, I don't care. You know, he accepts that this is going to destroy his life. Win, lose, or draw, this isn't going to end well for him, and he decides that it's worth it, you know? And maybe there can be a bit of ambiguity as to whether it's worth it because he'll be famous again, or it's worth it because this little girl deserves the same as everyone else. And that's kind of the end of Red's story this episode, and we're going to move over to Hops and Amelia, who are kind of, they're having a bit of a, I think there's going to be a little bit of a love story that brews between them in the latter half of the season, because they're going to be spending a lot of time together investigating Ovoxum, and they're going to talk to a leaker in this episode. They're going to be going all around town talking with people who used to work for them, who want to work for them, you know, their competitors, all that. And they're gonna, you know, develop a sort of a banter that's a little flirty. And Amelia is going to get a lead on a leaker. Someone from Ovoxum who's heard about her and heard about her plight and wants to talk. And Hops is a little less enthusiastic about this leaker than Amelia, but she convinces him that it's a good idea, this is a good lead, you know, whatever. And so they go and they meet up with this leaker, and they've got, like, mountains of information, all this stuff, you know, oh, well, I'll tell you everything, let's get back to a safe house, and I'll spill everything, I've got all of it on this flash drive right here. And as soon as they show the flash drive, it explodes in their hands, and then a bullet goes right through their brain. This is a setup. It's an ambush. The leaker was followed. He didn't know, but he was. And they're, you know, ambushed by dozens of or not dozens, maybe like half a dozen Ovoxum agents who, like, all have guns and stuff. And Hops is tasty in a fight. You know, he's an enforcer. He's an investigator, right? He can handle himself in a fist fight. Maybe he's got like a snub-nosed revolver situation, like an old 30s detective. But he's, you know, maybe he's struggling to fight, like, two of the guys at once. You know, he knocks the gun out of the hand of the other, he shoots one of them in the leg, and then gets tackled. Meanwhile, we see Amelia, like, doing, like, flip kicks, like fucking Black Widow, in a fucking Avengers movie, and she's like kicking the shit out of all these guys, and she's like John Wick style, like shooting them all in the head, and she saves Hops, and like it's very much like oh shit, this lady is not to be fucked with. She has spent the last decade in the sewers training like a teenage mutant ninja turtle, man. She knows what's up, and they are like, okay, we know that we're onto something, because they wouldn't have sent somebody to kill us if we weren't, important, if we weren't doing something that they're scared of. And so they escape, they retreat. And this is kind of and that's the end of the episode. Final episode I have completely plotted out, and also the final episode of trial prep, right? This is, the case has been finalized, it's been put through all of the official channels, and they've like decided on a date, and this is the day that they're, Red goes in, and he's, dealing with the lawyers, right? And the lawyer that Ovoxum has hired is Mr. Dubois. He is Dubois.
Great name.
And yeah. And he's like one of the great like corporate attorneys, and maybe he and Red have a bit of a past, maybe they were both like in the criminal defense racket at the same time, and Red was, representing people, but he was like he was more of a bleeding heart, right? He was like more thoughtful, and he cared about victims and stuff, whereas Dubois was just about getting his client off no matter what. He didn't care who he had to intimidate, what witnesses he had to tamper with, right? Evidence and all this shit. He didn't care. He was just about winning the case. And so, it's just, just a situation in which he's going in a trial prep, right? And he's got Liza with him. And he thinks, and it's like, that's one of his tactics on the jury, right? Is that he's doing jury selection. And it's a very big deal, because they got to find people who aren't one way or the other. So Liza's been brought in for custody, or she's not been brought into custody. She's brought in for her own protection, and she's being, protected by the government and by the cameras, and Ovoxum knows that if they send someone to take her out, kill her, sedate her and kidnap her, whatever, they will be found out. Like, there's so many cameras pointed at them right now that there's nothing they can do about it, and Amelia is pretty worried about this, and Red and Hops both ensure to her, they tell her she has never been safer than she is right now, because this is the one place that Ovoxum wouldn't try a damn thing. And so that's kind of the situation. Is Red goes in, and he's picking jury, and it's a whole jury selection process. And we would, obviously for the actual show, we would get real lawyers, and we'd have a conversation with them, and we'd help, the sort of questions that they would ask juries to, or possible jurors to narrow the selection down.
Do you think cloned people are people? And then the country guy say, I don't even think you're a person, because you don't believe what I believe. That's what the farmer guy.
And then
they'd be like, all right, he's out. Let's get him out.
And then the Ovoxum lawyer is like, actually, I think he might have a point here, sir. Let's, and it's like a whole thing, because Mr. Dubois is going to be just trying to postpone this as long as possible to help build his case. Whereas Red is like, I know, I'm ready. I've spent the last few, because these episodes aren't happening sequentially. It's not like it's one day and then another day and then another. This has been weeks. And so I've been building this case for weeks. I have a bulletproof argument. You just want to, obfuscate the truth and delay and delay and delay until we all die of old age. Or whatever. And so, it's just kind of bickering between Dubois and Red throughout the entire time. And Hops decides he's going to take Amelia out, to help her calm her nerves. And this is going to be a nice episode. This is Hops and Amelia go on a date.
I believe you.
They go on a date. This is genuinely a nice episode. They're going on a date.
Shot or something.
They go on a date, and Hops calls one of his friends who runs one of the media corporations in the city, and he like gets his friend to like arrange this sort of paparazzi celebrity, controversy that like distracts all of the news organizations so that Hops and Amelia can just enjoy a short, nice day out on the town. They go on a date, and it's all very sweet. Maybe it ends with Amelia pecking him on the cheek and then, going into the safe house or whatever. And Red, and that's how their story ends. And Red takes Liza back to the law firm after they've selected the jury and everything. And she's like really nervous. Like the actual like importance of this trial is starting to like hit her, and she's like really nervous, and she just starts like bawling. And he's really, this is like 100%, he's showing his humanity, and he's like, it's okay, baby, we'll all be okay, and he's like very fatherly, and he's taking care of her, and he's holding her, and they watch It's a Wonderful Life, and they kind of bond over that, and that's how the episode ends.
Red? Pedro Pascal. Pedro Pascal.
You're right. Pedro Pascal can be Red. There you go. That's perfect. Yeah. And then the next episodes, like, I think the trial should happen over, like, 2 episodes of just, like, the arguments, the opening statements, and all this stuff. And this is, I can't really, there's no way to, like, plot out what happens in the trial besides that they, it's just arguments. It's just talking. It's basically the middle section of To Kill a Mockingbird, where it's just like evidence goes against evidence, and Dubois throws something their way that they didn't know about, and Red is able to knock it back at him with like expert like conversations, and he's like able to Red interviews a bunch of like experts and historians and philosophers, and Dubois only interviews people who work for Ovoxum, and it's like obvious like people that he has bought off to say good things about Ovoxum and how they would never hurt anyone and all this stuff. But and it's a trial, right? It's 2 episodes of just back and forth between these 2 legal titans as they're like talking about stuff, and occasionally we'll have Hops and Amelia and maybe even Dixon shows up to the trial, and they like just talk, and they're like interested, and they talk about how things are going and all this stuff, and maybe they, to give those 3 characters something to do while Red's doing all the heavy lifting of the trial. It's like maybe they catch wind that Dubois is planning to do some jury tampering so that this becomes a mistrial, has to get thrown out, and so they have to infiltrate his jury tampering and stop his agent and all this stuff. And that's, it's a trial. I don't know how else to describe it. And then we're gonna get to the ending. Now the ending is happy. So this show ends with dun dun dun. The jury rules that Liza is in fact a person, and she deserves all of the same rights as any other person. And it's like, it's this huge joyous moment. They're just like, they're hugging and they're crying and everyone's so happy. But then the jury has also ruled that Amelia Hart is guilty of stealing proprietary technology and information from Ovoxum Incorporated. And so she has been sentenced to 30 years in prison. She, even though she stole a person from slavery, she still stole from a corporation, and in the future, no good deed goes unpunished. And so she's not surprised. Like, this is kind of what she expected to happen. She knew that she wasn't going to get out of this unscathed, and she knew that there's no way that she can just go on raising her daughter. And so she makes Hops promise that he's going to take care of her until she gets out. And she knows full well that she's going to die in prison. Like, she knows that Ovoxum is going to hire some killer who's already in prison to assassinate her, just to show that nobody fucks with the company. And, as recompense, Ovoxum has been forced to pay a $2 million fine which is basically like saying that you have to give me 25 cents. You know, the company does not get punished, really. They just aren't allowed to keep this little girl as a test subject for the rest of time. And that's a victory enough in Amelia's eyes and in Red's eyes. And so Hops agrees. He promises Amelia that he's going to take care of Liza. He's going to make sure that she's happy and she's healthy and she's educated and all this stuff, and she's going to live the best life that he can provide her. And Amelia says, I know you will, because you're a good man, even if you don't believe it. And she's taken back, she's taken away, thrown in jail, thrown to a jail, throw away the key, right? And Red and Red and Liza and Hops walk out of the courtroom, and it's like this whole huge thing, you know, tons of cameras, tons of paparazzi, all this stuff. And it's revealed that Hops and Liza just snuck out the back, and the people that are with Red are, you know, it's a fake. They're decoys, because, you know, Hops and Red don't want Liza to be, you know, taken, like, just like be attacked by the paparazzi or whatever. And turns out that was a really good idea, because Ovoxum hired an assassin to stand in the paparazzi, you know, line, and he just opens fire on Red and the Hops and Liza decoy, and Red is shot in the chest, and he falls over dead. And the two people are like, they're not people, they're like robots or whatever. He falls over, and it's very much Walter White at the end of Breaking Bad. And he's just like staring up in the sky, and he's just like, he knows he was a bad man. You know, he did bad things. He was a drunk, he was a liar, and he was a cheat. But he did one good thing with his life, and with that, he's happy. He's happy with how it ended. Mm-hmm. And he's looking up at the sky as all the paparazzi, nobody helps him. Everyone's just taking pictures of him as he's bleeding to death on the ground, because it's the future and everything's horrible.
Yeah, I love that. That'd be great imagery. They're all like crowded around him. No one's helping. No one's even screaming for the police. They're just taking photos.
And that's the end. Good luck and get fucked.
Just to add to it, it'd be great if you did like a little thread kind of in the background where it's like there's, you know, there's like a group of people that like hate the clone, or like the clone people, right? Mm-hmm. And that's sort of like the cover, but like this just sort of like a it's like a fake hate group that's made by what is it, Ovoxum?
Ovoxum,
that's it.
Yeah. And
that I mean, that could be the cover for, like, you know, how they, you know, get the guy to shoot. Like, you could have radio cover over the or like radio talk over the credits. That's like, or like the news over the credits. It's like, oh, you know, a completely unrelated to Ovoxum terrorist group member of this, you know, society that hates clone people tried to assassinate the lawyer and blah 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 today on the steps of Capitol Hill.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? So they don't even get, you know, they don't even get caught for it. Like, they don't even get him dying.
100%. 100%. That's good. Yeah, I like that.
And you could have, like, threats mentioned throughout, you know? Like, oh, you know, and, like, yo, even if you win this case, they're going to shoot you down on the steps. Maybe not so literal.
Yeah, maybe it'll, like, you rain down hellfire upon you. You know, something like that.
It doesn't even matter. After the case, they're still going to be coming after you.
Yeah.
And that's why he sends him at the bag. Damn. It's good. I like that. Good ending. Sad, but good.
Sad,
I thought it was gonna be sad or I didn't. I thought the little girl was gonna die and the other dude was gonna die.
Yeah.
I'm glad you didn't do that.
No, I think there had to be a little bit of joy at the end with, like, Hops. You know, he saves Liza, and they, you know, live happily ever after as father and daughter. You know.
Mm-hmm. That's why he's Pedro Pascal.
That's why he's Pedro Pascal. Yeah. All right. Yeah, that's my show.
Who's the other guy? Who's
Matthew McConaughey.
Wait.
Because you said Pedro Pascal
was the lawyer. Yeah, it's Red. Hops is the other guy. Yeah.
But I think Pedro Pascal is better suited to Hops. Yeah. And I think Red should be Matthew McConaughey or Brad Pitt or someone like one of those guys who's just like handsome, but he could definitely do depravity.
Somebody that could be a scumbag.
Yeah. Jake Claw.
Timothy Chalamet.
Timothy
Puts me in
Chalamet.
every role ever.
Willy Wonka, and then Enrico Rendier. Yeah. But that's my show. Good luck and get fucked.
I liked it. Very good. Very, very, very fun.
Yeah.
Well, not fun. Very sad and, like,
yes.
good. Dramatic.
Sad. This is a very philosophical show. Like, during the case, there'll be a lot of talk about, like, what makes a person and, like, humanity and all this stuff, you know?
Yeah.
It's not, like, satirical. It's more, like, it's satirical because it's a cyberpunk thing, and all cyberpunk is, you know, satirical on some level, but it's very much, it is sincere in its, you know, philosophical notions.
Approach, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for listening to the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. I've been your host, Charles. Along with me has always been my co-host, editor, producer, co-pilot, gunner, navigator, orator, and podcasting associate, Jacob Gloth. If you like what you heard here and you want to hear more, please give us a like, a follow, subscribe. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog, tell your cat. And remember, we will be here next week with a brand new televisual series for you to imagine and enjoy in our collective brain space. So thank you, and good night.